sewists, we are finishing up this coat this week no matter what. So we're going to head over and start pinning in the lining. I'm also going to show you the instructions because I really have not done that for this entire process. So let's go look at the instructions and work on some lining. And little Miss Trouble is back there too, so I'm going to have to evict the kitty cat. Last week I mentioned that I was just going to start stitching down the collar, which is now stitched down. So I'm ready to start pinning in the lining, but in order to do that, kitty fur everywhere, I need to make the little loop for the buttonhole. So I'm going to cut a piece of my velvet. I think I'm just going to do a little velvet loop and make and use that for my button. I also have my whole button thing that I need to work out. I've got 3 buttons that I want to kind of combine together to make one big button, maybe. I don't know how I'm going to work it out. But anyway, let's make a loop real quick, and then we will pin it on and start pinning in our lining. Also, let's look at our instructions. We are a long process. Here they show putting on the ribbon. They don't even show putting in the shoulder pad. Wait a minute. Okay, here's where they talk about doing the chain. Hand stitch lining to coat, press sleeves, stitch in the lining, sew on the button. So they don't even talk about the shoulder pad. All right, after all that, I'm gonna read through it again to make sure I'm somehow not missing the whole shoulder pad thing. I will try it on a couple of times to see if I even need it or if I care about it. The shoulder pad does give it shape, but because of how there is no actual shoulder seam, I don't know if I'm going to want it because of how it's, I don't know. May not even care about the shoulder pad. Do care about the chain, do care about the ribbon, do care about the lining, all the other stuff I care about. So we'll come back to the shoulder pad. I'm going to make the loop real quick. I'll meet you back over at the sewing machine after I cut my little piece for the loop. All right, the loop dimensions in the pattern is 1.5 wide by 3.5 long. I'm gonna make it longer. I can always cut off the ends. It's just easier to sew with to have the extra fabric. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut out my little rectangle, take it over and sew it up and flip it around. The hardest part about this thing is flipping through this little tiny loop, especially in velvet, but it will look pretty. And they recommend doing it out of whatever you piped with. And since I chose not to pipe, the velvet is my choice. I forgot to mention you're going to cut your little loop on the bias, and we're sewing with 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to sew this up real quick and then I'll show you flipping it around. You can see why I went ahead and made it longer because it's just a little easier to work with. It gives me more to hang on to when I've got it under the machine. And now I've got to attempt to turn it around. I have this tool. It has this little ring on the end, and I think this might be the easiest method to turn it around. I have not trimmed any threads yet. You slide it in, and this is another reason to leave it long because if it makes any little holes or anything, you've got extra at the end to pull it off. So you kind of hook it. There's a little latch to kind of close over it. You can do it in the seam edge too. There it goes. It's sliding. Yeah, that did it great. Okay, so I have plenty of loop here now. It's kind of thicker than I was hoping, but it's what they recommend, so it'll be fine. All right, the other thing you could use, if you don't want to make your own loop and use a button, you could use a frog type closure, which will have both sides. It'll have the decorative side with the loop side that will close over itself. So a frog would be a totally appropriate type of closure also. So now that I have this, we're ready to go put it in place and pin it where it belongs, and then start pinning in our lining all the way around that outer edge. So let's go start pinning it in, and then we'll come back and sew it. As a reminder, these are the buttons that I have chosen. They're roses with little rhinestones in between. They are gold underneath, and there is, you can see the gold in this. So the gold does go. I kind of prefer the silver. I would like more silver accents, but we're going with what we're going with. We're going with what I could find. So I think I'm going to do a cluster of 3 buttons. I may attach the 3 buttons to each other and then, or to a shank, like attach the 3 things and make make it a separate shank. Like the 3 things get sewn to a button and then that button gets sewn down so that they make, so it's like a single shank, and then this will go around the loop because I kind of want a big, like 1 button's too small. But I like these buttons. Everything I looked at, this was my preference. So that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. Here's my little loop, my extra long loop. I've just stitched it together down here out of the way just to help keep its shape. And we're just going to pin it down like this. I'm just going to put a few pins in it. Then I'm going to go ahead and start pinning in my lining. So this is where we're at. Just wanted to remind you of the cute button. I need to find a button to sew the buttons to. I think that's going to be how I'm going to handle it. I'm jerry-rigging this whole thing together. All right, so to pin in, we've got right sides together. I'm starting at center back seam. I'm lining up my center back to center back, my dart to dart, my sleeve to sleeve, and I'm just going around. There are less seams after we get past the sleeve, and it's just shape after that, but there are some notches to help with that. So we're just going all the way around. I'm leaving a little hole to pull it through in the bottom back. Yes, so they have you leaving open enough of a hole on each side of the center back seam at the bottom hem so that you can flip it through. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm just pinning all the way around, leaving open that little hole. And once I get that all pinned together, I'll meet you over at the sewing machine and we're gonna sew it in. Okay, I'm all pinned together. This is a giant project. A couple things when you get ready to sew yours together. If I am doing a woven lining and a knit for my outer piece. So there is a difference in how they're going together. The knit has more give. When I was pinning them together, there was a lot more play in that knit. So I was having to be very careful to make sure that I didn't get any stretch or movement when putting them together. When sewing, I'm going to make sure the knit is on the bottom and the woven is on top. So my lining is going to be on top. What that does is it allows the feed dogs to help ease in any difference between the two. I'm also going to have my even feed foot engaged. If you have a walking foot, that would also work great. I'm just using a straight stitch at 1/2 inch. If you are going to start in the back on one side of the opening and sew all the way around to the other side, you were going to get a little bit of movement. So you need to be cautious and pay attention. It's almost impossible to sew such a long seam and not end up with the top stretching just a tiny bit. So that even feed foot or that walking foot would be really important to help keep that from happening. Also pinning it really well will also help. So there are some notches back here. I am not going to leave open as large an opening as the pattern calls for. My fabric is not that bulky and it will pull through very easily. They give you plenty of room to pull through and I just don't need it. So I'm going to make my opening a little smaller. You can just see how my knit's pulling out and my woven is going this way. Can you see the difference of the two? I never went back in and just serged around my lining. My lining is fraying, not my knit. My lining is fraying. We have 1/2 inch seam allowance. It's going to take me forever just to get started on this. Good golly, Miss Molly. Okay, this is just awkward. What an awkward thing. Away we go. right, I'm all the way around. I am going to take out my pins that I have not taken out yet, the few that are left, and I'm just going to check to make sure I don't have any foldovers, especially like at the darts, places like that, that I don't have any holes. Yeah, like right here I have a seam that flipped over. I need to fix that, and I have a dart that flipped over. So I'm going to seam rip and fix those few areas. All right, so here's my center back neck, and you can see it slipped down a little bit, and this dart has flipped over, and then down here this seam has flipped over. So I need to fix in here, right along here, and this is really, you can just see the difference between the two, how it's giving me issues. I'm also just going to, after I get those flipped or fixed, I'm going to check the whole thing, make sure it's really happy and I don't have any issues. Here, I'm just going to show you on the inside so you can see. Here's my applique parts. You can see the applique down here. All right, so I'm going to fix those parts. I'm going to go ahead and flip it around and just see how it's hanging. I'm just going to check the hang real quick. I have an appointment, so after that we will see how much more time I have for sewing today. I may be back, may look different. I may be back, not be back to sewing until tomorrow. My seam rippers. So let's seam rip real quick and fix this little dart, just those few little areas where it slipped. I want to get those repaired, and then I want to just slip it on. And I also want to see if I need to do any clipping along that seam, sleeve seam, where I talked about in last week, where it looks a little tight. I've looked at a lot of people who've made this pattern, and just because of the origami style and the way it sews together, there's that little curvy spot right in here that often looks tight, I've noticed, and I'm going to see if that's something that I need to address or not. I'm going to edge stitch. That's the other thing I'm going to do. I'm going to edge stitch all the way around this lining. I will show you. That's going to help the lining hang nicely. And it'll keep the lining from peekabooing. We don't want a peekaboo lining. So let's check for pins. Have you ever sewn something like this and accidentally left a pin in it? I have made a coat before and worn it many times before I finally sat down just right and sat on a pin. I think I got all the pins. All right, I'm going to put my hand in and we're going to pull this around. We're going to check it out. This will also let me see if there's any other areas. I'm going to be real careful with this because this lining just frayed. All right, so I can go ahead now that that's done, and I can find a sleeve. I can tuck a sleeve. I'm going to turn my ring around so it doesn't snag anything. I've got a sleeve of my lining, and I'm going to push it into the sleeve of the coat. Make sure I get the correct sleeve to sleeve here. All right, now where's the other sleeve? Sleeve of lining to sleeve of coat. Cool. Okay. Now this is, I am going to come back before I actually sew in the lining and everything, but this lets me now see how they hang together and how they behave, how that lining's going to look on the inside, how that affects the hang of this garment. So I'm going to go over and look at it in the mirror for a minute. Let's go see. Okay, so nothing's pressed. It's not hanging great yet because not pressed, not edge stitched around the lining. The chain isn't in, etc. The length, I don't know if you can see, the length is great. Ignore the slippers. The length is great. I'm really pleased. Also happy with the fit. Definitely goes around fine. It's not necessarily the most flattering coat. Like it's an easy wear. Would be really pretty with fur. I see this a lot with fur. Also very pretty. It is like, it really it shows the rear. Like this is one that kind of accentuates the hip, which was the look at the time. This was one of those things that really showed the hip. This definitely does. But anyway, here's your first look. Very unfinished. Got to work on the sleeves, got to work on the linings, got to work on all that stuff. Totally, I'm happy with everything though. It's ready for some edge stitching. I'm looking at that seam. Yeah, that works okay. Okay, here's the seam. And because this is knit, it's really not pulling. It's not pulling at all. I could do some clipping, but I'm happy with it. I just don't want it to get a hole, which is one of the concerns when you clip there, is that you end up with a hole. But actually, it's laying nice, and it's because this is a knit. So I'm gonna leave it alone. I am gonna go ahead, I have enough time before my appointment. I'm gonna go ahead and edge stitch all the way around this. And what that means, I'll show you over the sewing machine. We're gonna head back to the sewing machine now. Let's go sew. Okay, if you want to make my cute little top, I will have it linked below. I made it, when I made it, I was thinking it'd be a really cute swimsuit cover-up, but I've ended up wearing it just as a cozy, casual little summery top. Yes, I know it's November. We had our 2 days of cold weather and we're back to 80 degrees again. And we're in the middle of November because that's the weather report from Oklahoma. Craziness. So now that I've done that, I'm going to come back. I'm leaving this to the right side. There is a tiny hole here, this tiny hole, and this is the hardest part about edge stitching. Now you could definitely do this by hand. I am pushing all of the seam allowance towards the lining. And I am going to stitch that seam allowance to the lining all the way around. Now this, I'm going to probably raise my machine up. I'm going to see how hard it is to sew it. Opening in the back, pardon all the threads. I am pushing all of the seam allowance towards the lining, all of it, just like that. We're going to be stitching on the lining. So I'm going to come over here to the sewing machine. And this is where you might have wished, I might have, speaking personally, might have wished I'd left a bigger opening. We shall see. We'll see how it goes. Because it's probably going to get kind of tight. We'll see how it goes. I may have to do this in little increments. The other thing I could do, actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I could open up the center back of the lining and sew it back up. One way to do this is this center back. Where's my lining center back? Okay, so I have this big, long center back seam in the lining. I could open that up, and that would allow me a lot more room to get in there. And actually, it would also allow me to sew up that bottom part of this. I don't know why they didn't have us do it that way, honestly. Other than they're going to have us put the chain in. But yeah, that might be the other option. So what do I want to do? Do I want to seam rip this big, long center back seam out, or what? So if I open that up, yeah, that would make it a lot easier. Okay, so now that I'm talking about doing this, guys, because I really do want to edge stitch this lining down. I definitely do. And I think that's just the smartest way to do it, is to go ahead and open up that center back lining. That's what we're going to do. Okay, I'm going to do a quick pause. I'm going to open up my center back lining to make my life easier for edge stitching. I am going to seam rip this lining, but I want you to just see how delicate it is and how it just wants to come apart. So I have to be real cautious here with this lining. Can you see the holes already in it? Lining is a delicate little creature. This lining in particular is. And I actually may come back and reinforce it a little bit. I may put a little interfacing or something behind this. Just hold together better, especially down here at this hem, which we will be covering this with our beautiful ribbon, our decorative ribbon. This is at the very bottom hem, but look at how far it's frayed. Okay, now you can really see. Can you see that lining? That's an unhappy lining. Yeah, this is going to get, I'm going to be putting some, going to be reinforcing my lining. All right, so, oh yeah, that's plenty. So I have opened up, I don't know, 16 inches, let's say. But now that I have opened up that much, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put a little interfacing on the bottom of this before I even start sewing, just because it's fraying so madly. Let me get a little delicate piece of interfacing. And I'm using a knit, a very delicate fusible knit, and that's what I'm going to fuse down here at the bottom on both sides real quick. I'm going to just fuse that on, and then we'll be back to do our edge stitching. Okay, not beautiful, but protected and won't be seen because it will be in the seam allowance. So now we can head over and do our edge stitching. I am stitching, you can see my lining right here, my line. That line is going right inside this foot, so it's right here. So I'm getting really close to that edge. All that's going to do is help keep the lining to the inside. Now this is all going to get a good press. Also will help keep it all to the inside. I've got everything lined up. It's going to be awkward. I'm going to be careful. You can see where it's lined up. Going to constantly be checking underneath that all the seam allowances are pushed the correct direction. Every time I check, I'm going to try and remember to sink my needle so that it doesn't slide around under the foot. I also don't want to get an extra layer under there. We're making it up into the neckline now. I'm just going to pull this around so you can kind of see. Sorry, I know it's a lot of layers there. You can kind of see my edge stitching. Let's see how pretty that's looking, and it does look nice. It's just going to help keep everything in behaving itself. it automatically makes it pull to the lining to the lining side. It just makes it want to lay where it belongs. It really does help. So on the inside, if you look at the inside, you can see that little bit of stitching. It's really slight. You barely see it. Got the thread to cut right there. All the way around, and we still have our little hole. So I'm going to come back here where I opened up the back. Just going to flip it around, and I'm going to sew that back up real quick. After I sew up the back, which I think I'm just going to go ahead and do right now because there's not much to this. So we're just going to flip this lining around on itself. I will just tell you my biggest regret of this entire project is this lining. Just have not been real pleased with it. I think the pattern is pretty. I'm not happy with the acetate. I really thought I was getting polyester. I'll put that right next to that magnet. Let's just sew our lining back up. And after this, I'm going to give it a really good press. I probably press it off camera. I think it's last week's video or the week before. I can't remember, but I have in one of the previous videos on this coat, I have all about how to press velvet. And then we will be ready to finish our sleeve lining. Let's see what else is there. There's the pretty ribbon on the hem and the chain on the hem. And I have to figure out my little button thing. I think I figured out how I'm going to do my button, how I'm going to combine my 3 buttons to make one. All right, lining is back together. I now have a mostly put together coat. Woot, woot, woot. Okay, trims here and there. We are getting really close to finally. The coat that never ends is actually going to end. Look at that pretty applique in the back. I tell you, that is a stunner. That is really neat. I am excited to get this a good press so that it lays pretty and get this lining going on the sleeves. All right, see you in the morning. I cannot believe I did that entire thing with the camera or with the mic over here. I'm a ding dong. Okay, I just want to show you real quick. I've just finished understitching. I got to get out of here, but I want to show you. I haven't pressed it yet, but look at how much better the lining stays in place just with understitching, even without pressing it yet. You can see it's already pulling where it belongs. Understitching does such a good job. See, it's along the hem especially, it's just staying where it belongs. I do like how you see that flash of beautiful bright blue. You can see how it's just barely rolling out now, where before it was like this. It was really pulling out. And now it really stays so much better with just a little bit of understitching, and it won't take much. I don't think I'm going to do a shoulder pad. I don't know how I would get it to stay in place just because of how the coat is. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to mess with the shoulder pad. Okay, I got to get out of here. I got stuff to do. See you in the morning. It's a new day. We're going to grab the coat back there off the dress form. I'm going to give it a press around the whole collar, all around that outer edge that we did the edge stitching on. I'll show you that. I've got my my scrap piece of velvet draped over the ironing board, so it's ready to go. And then I will, after we do that, I'm going to come back over here and we're going to just sew around the sleeve at a 1/2 inch. I'm just going to kind of baste around it just to give me a demarcation line, a nice straight line for folding and attaching my lining. It'll also help it cup a little bit. So those are the things we're going to work on. Once we get that in, I'm going to show you how I'm going to jerry rig my button, and we're going to sew the button on, and we're really close to being done other than the chain and the ribbon. So a lot of handwork actually today. There's not a lot of machine work to be done. It's mostly handwork. It's going to go slow for me, hopefully not so slow for you, and we should have our beautiful coat done. I will say I filmed the whole end of yesterday's video, the stuff that's done with this camera here, with my mic hanging on the camera strap over there. I did have my little mini camera set up over here and it was on for part of it. I'm very concerned how the sound is going to be. And yeah, I'm really concerned that I may have to do some crazy editing or some voiceover. I do not know. We'll find out when I go to edit it. I figured it out at the end of the day when I went to turn off the camera and I saw the mic hanging there and I looked down and I was like, I actually keep a note usually right here that says, don't forget mic. Because I forget mic all the time. And yesterday I took it off, ran downstairs, did a bunch of stuff, came up to put it back on, and actually never put it back on. So let's go get the coat and get pressing and get to work. Got my velvet down, got my iron on a synthetic silk setting. I'm going to put the velvet to velvet. And when I press this, when I'm pressing this around, I'm going to press it. I hope you can see. It's a little hard with the dark against dark, but I'm going to be pressing so there's just a little bit of the velvet peeking on the outer edge. Put my fingers under there so you can see. So it's going to be kind of like that. That's how I'm pressing it all the way around the outer edge, just to keep it to keep my lining from rolling out. That's the goal. So I'm just going to give this whole thing a press all the way around gently with a low iron, and then we'll address the sleeves. Those kitties, I do not know where they find them. I am constantly finding buttons. So I did a gentle press all the way around, and I went ahead and just put a few pins in the hem where we have the opening. It's just fraying like crazy down there, and pinning it up protects that raw edge from continuing to fray. Even if I need to get back into it, I can, but at least it's pinned and protecting that raw edge. I'm now going to take my cuff edge here, and I'm just going to go around this edge at 1/2 inch. It gives me something to stitch to when I'm doing the lining, and it makes it easier for me to have a good demarcation line. Often when you do that, it makes it easier for the garment to fold in. It's just one of those little tricks that makes everything a little easier. So I'm going to do that now. And on both sleeves, I'm only doing the outer sleeve, not the lining. The lining's not getting caught in this. You could do it on both of them, but you want to do it separately. And then we'll be ready to hand stitch our sleeves together. And then we'll be moving on to the chain and the ribbon. All right, mic is on, mic is plugged in. Don't forget mic. Let's see. Gonna go free arm. I'm gonna take this out. Every time I sew in the well, everyone's like, lift your machine up. I'll tell you a little story. My machine has a little air compressor where I push and it'll rise up, and I cannot get it to do it for anything. It's there. I know it works. My husband comes in and he'll just touch it and it goes up every time. I cannot get it to happen no matter what I do. So I sew in the well. I need to get him to show me this is a newer cabinet. I had the exact same cabinet before, and we moved it multiple times. And in the last move, it got broken, and so we ordered me a new one when we moved here, and I can't get it to work. And it's just me. The other one had a big air canister, like I could see the mechanism. This one has the newer chain driven. I don't know. It's different. I can't get it to work, and it's definitely, as my dad would say. My dad, being a mechanic, he would say, sounds like operator error to me, and it probably is. All right, we're just going to sew around the 1/2 inch using our free arm, making sure that seam is open. This is not supposed to show. This is strictly to help me with my handwork. You can baste this, you can use the smaller stitch. I'm going to go ahead and do this, I think, with a regular stitch instead of a basting stitch personally. This is bias, but it has the velvet behind it, but both are a little bit stretchy, so I'm going to try not to stretch too much. All right, so I'm going to do that for both sleeves. That's how it looks. There you can see the stitching. And that's going to make it easier when I get ready to do my handwork. All right, let's go ahead and do the other one. All right, now that that is done, I'm going to reach in and pull through the lining piece. I could also do this on the lining, but I don't know if I need to. I'm going to look and see. We're going to line up the lining seam to the coat seam. And the main thing we want to make sure when we're doing this is that we did not twist that seam. So I'm going to make sure it's smooth in there, that I didn't rotate it around too far. That would be bad. That would be very uncomfortable and tight. I think I am. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the sleeve. It just really makes it easy for me to see what to match to. And because the sleeve frays, it will also just help this naughty fabric behave a little bit. And then we'll be ready to do our handwork. So I'll meet you back here in a second for handwork. So I am just tucking under now my hem around, and I have that little line to help me with. You can see I've lined up my seam for both and just pinned it down. I want to make sure the lining is down a little bit. I'm rolling it down. I don't want the lining to peek out, so I'm being careful about that. So I'm rolling the seam that I made, that little stitch, to the inside. Everything needs to be hidden. And can you see this right here? Yeah, I'm having some issues with this, and this is common with brocade because it has floating stitches. Satins will do this too, where they pill or they pick. So I'm going to carefully find that thread up here, and I'm going to try and pull it up. And actually, I think it's pulling from this. I can feel there's a rough edge. I'm going to put my tray back in. All right, that will help protect it. Okay, so we're going to pin that down. And then once we get that pinned, we're going to come in and match up our lining to that seam kind of carefully, all keeping everything rolled to the inside. And then I'm going to just hand whip those two together. All right, so it's pinned in, and I'm going to start stitching around. You can see I've kind of pinned it just a little bit low. It's easy for it to want to roll out and peek out, and I don't want that to happen. I'm also going to come along the seam and do a few stitches to hide, hidden in there, but also to keep the lining from stay down, keep it from creeping out. In the coat itself up here, where it also tends to want to, you can see there should be looseness. There should be lots of room in this lining. You never want your lining tight. The lining often, or always, the lining should be bigger. You should have room in the lining so that when you put it on, there's room for that lining to stretch and move against the body. If it's too tight, it always pulls on the outside. You will get holes in your lining. It will pucker the outside of your garment. So your lining should be bigger, but you don't want it to peek through to the outside. So up here, even though I've edge stitched, I'm going to come in like along this dart. I'm going to put a few little hand tacks in here to hold it down, and along this back seam, just in a few places. It won't be seen, but it's going to help just keep the lining in these areas from rolling up, because it wants to just roll up. It's soft and silky, and it slides against that that velvet. So those are things that I'm going to work on. I'm just going to, there's not much to this. I take my thread, well, let me thread up my needle, and I'll show you how because I have two machine stitches, I actually use those machine stitches for my hand stitching. I'll show you. Let me get my needle threaded up. Hopefully you can see this. Here's my thread. And I take my needle and I will go through those threads, especially since I have something loosely woven like this brocade. So I've got brocades and jacquards here. Both have floating threads, and then I will come through and I'll pick up the threads on this one. So I'm using the machine stitched threads on both sides. Make sure I don't get my thread on the wrong side. And I just attach them to each other, and I do it about every other one. And it's slow going, but it works really well. Other than I have the camera between me and my work, it just hides it. You can't see it. but it gives me something to work from, and I'm just going to slowly work my way around. So that's what I'm going to do for both sleeves. Come on, Leanne.
Where are you going?
That's up to you guys. I can go anytime. I'm just sitting here. Okay, so here's my center back seam. There is a knot in there. It's very hard to see, and I am just going into that seam, not all the way through, picking up some of the seam allowance underneath, and I'm just marrying the two, just making it so it stays together and it keeps it from slipping very much. That's it. So that my collar stays in place, everything stays in place, and you can see it's just making it a little more sturdy, and I won't have problems with my lining slipping. You can see how I've kind of got it pulled to the back a little bit, and that's all I'm doing. That's it. And I just pull my thread back through. I'm not really making too many knots. There is one knot in here. I'm making them really tiny, but it is staying. I don't know if I can even get it where you can see it. And I've done the same thing already over here in this seam. Just doing a few little tacks here and there just to help keep my lining from wanting to slip out. Start working on all of the finishing touches. The hems are in on the sleeve, and if I have any of this left over, I may go in and put this on the sleeve on the inside. We'll see. So this is my ribbon I bought. It only says to get 1 inch ribbon, and of course this is definitely wider than 1 inch, but got a little sneaky pie in here coming to help. But it's so pretty, and I really love it. There is a purpose to this ribbon besides just being beautiful. You know how we edge stitched around to help keep the lining to the inside? Well, this ribbon also helps keep the lining to the inside. It weights the lining and it helps just keep it tucked to the inside so it's not always trying to peek out. And because I did wider, it's actually going to even do a better job. But the thing with the wide ribbon is that we have some curvy bits, and so we're going to have to do some shaping in these curvy spots. However, because of the type of ribbon that I'm doing, it's actually not going to be that hard. I can easily do a little basting if I need to, but it looks like it's going to be pretty easy since I'm hand stitching this in anyway. Now, if I wanted to, I probably could come in and do some machine stitching, but because of the type of ribbon I've chosen, it's just going to be really difficult. I am going to switch to thread color that matches the lining in the ribbon. I've been sewing mostly with this darker thread color, definitely going to the brighter blue now. And I'm doing 2 rows of stitching all the way around this coat. I am pinning all the way around. I've started in the center back. I'm going to come back around. I'm only stitching through the lining. It doesn't go through the coat. The lining is still open. So when I come back around, I will overlap, and so we have a nice finished off back seam without any raw edges in the in this ribbon piece, in this very decorative ribbon. Isn't that pretty though? That's the inside of the coat. Oh, that just makes me happy. I'm just telling you, the bling bling is giving me all the joy right now. So I'm going to be sitting here for hours and hours and hours and hours, stitching in approximately 5 yards on both sides, so it's 10 yards worth of stitching of ribbon. Then we're going to come back and put in the chain, and the chain goes on the actual velvet side inside the hem, just 2 feet worth, so about 1 foot on each side, just the straight part of the hem. Let me show you in the instructions so that you're keeping up with what I'm saying with the instructions so it makes more sense. Okay, so this is the instructions, and they show here's the center back, and they say starting at the center back, we're going to pin in and go all the way around our lining, and it says the entire coat, doing the edge and overlapping, and it does say reach in between to finish off the edges, and it says the purpose of the ribbon is to keep the lining in place. Then it talks about the chain, centering the chain on that center back seam, hand stitching in that seam allowance. And when they say seam allowance, they mean the hem allowance, that 1/2 inch that they've allowed at the bottom, or the seam allowance where it would be. That's where we're going to hand stitch in that hem. It's a tiny little, or that chain. It's a tiny little chain. I haven't even opened it yet. And we need 2 feet, 24 inches. I believe they give it in centimeters on the actual thing. It says 61 centimeters, which is 24 inches. So got to cut that, got to get my needle nose pliers out and take that apart, or find a metal clippers to get my chain apart. So anyway, that's what I'm working on all the rest of today, is this. I'm also, new day, new Stacy, no makeup Stacy, because I'm also going to go out and help my husband hang Christmas lights, because we have another 80-degree day, so we're going to get it done while it's really gorgeous out. So we'll see what I get done. Another sewing in between life. All right, we'll see what I get done. We'll show you some little close-ups of it, and then we're so close to getting done. All after this, all that's left is putting together that funky little button and getting it sewn, giving it a good press. I got to figure out what I want to wear with this so I can show you the final look. All right, see you in a bit. I'm going to sew around the entire bottom part of the coat first. And because I have this open, I can easily get my hand in here to help. But because of the type of ribbon I've chosen, which is a very decorative one, you can choose something plain, of course. I can come in between these two little cords here, and it's pretty easy to go between those two cords. It completely disappears. I don't have to use a gold thread. I'm just matching to the organza of the ribbon and the color of my lining. And this is going to go pretty fast, I think. And once I've done the bottom row, pretty fast. It's going to take me a while, but this is what I'm going to do all the way around the bottom. And once I've got the bottom row completely done, I have it pinned. I'm not going to cut it until I've actually sewn all the way around and I'm ready to overlap it. That's when I'm going to cut it, because there could be some shifting in here. If I were going to cut it, I'd cut it plenty long just to give myself room in case I have any issues. I don't want to have a problem and find out that I cut it and I end up needing an inch or something. So I usually leave it on. So I'm going to be here for a while until my husband says, I'm back with the ladder. He went to go buy a new ladder. Then I will be chief ladder holder and light untangler. So here's the look on the inside. You can see the seam allowance. This is all pushed towards the lining. This is where I edge stitched before, and I'm still catching that seam allowance when I'm stitching through the edge of my ribbon to the lining. I'm catching all of the seam allowance too. It's just one more reassurance. I just tied off my knot, but because I have that opening, it's easy for me to get in there. So when let me trim off my needle fell. Oop, there we go. All right, so now when I pull this up, I have stitched, I've gotten all of this stitched, about almost 2 feet stitched. And it's going pretty fast. And I've been thinking I could easily go ahead and just stitch up this other side at the, when I get ready to reload my needle, I don't have to just do one side. I could come back and do this side and then continue. So it would work either way. Anyway, I thought you'd want to see the inside, see how it looks from the inside as I'm stitching. This is the opening, so you can see there's the raw edge with the little stitches. And then as it goes, I am picking up all of the seam allowance. Made it to my center back seam up at the neckline, and as I'm sewing this, I'm thinking about it. This is the wrong side of the ribbon, just it's almost as pretty on the wrong side as it is on the right side. But I was thinking about this, and I just wanted to make a little mention here. I'm doing this super fancy ribbon, but it's not bad, but it's a little rough. And if you're sewing with somebody who has sensory issues or who just can't stand like a tag in their clothes, You definitely want to sew with like a nice, smooth, soft satin ribbon, something that would feel nice against the skin. This might be irritating to some people. It's pretty, it's blingy, but it would be annoying. Now, I'm also considering I have enough that I think I'm going to actually go ahead and put it in the sleeve too. Again, not for everyone. Oh, I think it's going to be pretty. I probably will only wear this rarely, if ever. I don't know how often I'll wear this. My daughter was saying, Mom, it's sort of like an art piece, which is probably how I'm going to treat it. It'll probably hang on a dress form once in a while in the back of a video. I don't know how often I'll wear it. It's one of those that I'll make and I will have enjoyed the journey of the project. Don't know how often I'll wear it, which is fine. That's just part of it for me. It's like art. So, but want to make the caveat if you're making this, think about your findings and how they're going to feel on, especially if you have sensory issues or tags and things bother you. Go with the soft, smooth satin ribbon. All right, we are in the home stretch. I would say I have less than an hour's worth of work left, I hope. I have completely got the trim around the inside of the coat. It looks really cute. I need to go around and press again. It's going to get another pressing, but I'm going to wait till the very end at this point. So now here's the bottom of my coat. And this is where I chose to put my tag. I put it at the very bottom instead of the very top. It's just, whatever you want. That's what I chose to do. So now I'm going to, it's still open. I'm going to put a second tag in on the inside, and I'm going to tell you a little reason why. I have bought vintage clothes in the past, and one of the things, especially you buy like secondhand vintage clothes, or you're like maybe the third owner, somebody's bought it before you, or it's gone through maybe somebody who buys up vintage clothes, washes them and resells them. Sometimes they remove the tags, and I hate that they do that. And if it's a really beautiful piece or a piece that's very artistic, it's so frustrating because sometimes there's a value in knowing who created it. I'm not saying that that's the case for me, but I'm just saying in general, this is how I feel. And I love it when sometimes there's a hidden name or something on the inside. They put another tag or something on the inside, which is what I'm doing in this coat. I don't think anyone's going to care, but I'm going to go ahead and put a second tag on the inside. The other reason I'm doing that is a lot of times linings get removed and replaced, but if you have a second tag on the inside, which is the part that doesn't get replaced, the name stays with the garment. So just a little heads up, especially if you do clothing that you know is heirloom, will maybe be passed down. If it's a wedding gown, something like that, something with a lining, put a second tag in there somewhere, because linings definitely do get replaced or patched, and a tag could get lost. And it's good to honor the dressmaker who put that whole thing together. So I am putting a second little tag in here on the inside hem where it won't be seen. But I've got my chain cut, got my handy dandy little metal clippers out, cut my piece of chain, and I'm just going to evenly space it in here. It's just 2 feet, so I'm going to put it evenly in here. Now the biggest thing is I've got to hand pick this to the velvet. I've got I don't know if you can see, this is my giant magnifying glass. It actually plugs in and turns on. Yesterday I sat and sewed off and on all day yesterday into the night, and by the end of the night my eyes and my fingers, my back, everything was tired, and I needed a magnifying glass with a light to get this thing done. So here's my delicate little chain. I have loads of it, and here is the back of my garment. My lining is really fraying in this little corner here. This little corner is giving me lots of issues, so I'm going to have to be really careful. I'm going to come in and do some repair work. I have to do repair work before it's ever even put together. I find the middle of my chain. So here's my middle, and that's what I'm going to put inside here. That's my center. And I'm going to stitch the chain first to the actual hem, not to the outside, but just along this, like the crease of the hem, or just inside the crease of the hem. That's where I'm going to stitch it, and that's going to prevent me from making marks that won't I don't want to see. Now the velvet does absorb a lot, but it can also leave little picks that you may not want to be left in there. So I'm going to just stretch out my little chain here. This isn't very heavy. It's just, I probably would have, I went with what they recommended. This is what they recommended. I probably would have gone with a little bit heavier. I mean, I could double this. I could put 2 of these in here. The chain does give a little weight and drape, and I think maybe a little bit heavier might be better. The heavier your fabric, the more of a weight you might need in your chain. So I'm going to fiddle with this for a minute, and then I'm going to stitch this down. Once I get this picked in, I'm going to marry the 2, and I'm going to stitch my lining closed to my coat. After that's done, the coat needs a pressing and we have to fix our button and we're complete. That's how close we are. I'm just going to show you the inside so you can see. Hopefully you can see. Here's the 2 rows of stitching for my ribbon, and here's where the ribbon is overlapped and stitched shut. Here's my tag. I sewed this tag on 3 different times. I practically wore my lining out, and I was wanting to stitch it where I had put some interfacing because this lining is just fragile. And if this did get worn a lot, this lining definitely would get replaced at some point, but it probably won't. I ended up just doing a running stitch in the end. I first did a blanket stitch and it looked terrible. I was like, normally a blanket stitch looks cute. Did not look cute in this. So after multiple tries, the plain old running stitch is where it's at. So there's our ribbon. And now we're going to work on this. I'll come back in a minute when I'm ready to stitch it. Let me get it all arranged, and then we'll do a little stitching. Okay, so here's the inside. One side, I've got it just started stitching down, and I've stitched to the seam allowance, and now I'm going to switch to stitching to the outside. This is to get it nice and secure. And I'm going to just do a few little stitches to the outside to see how it looks. It's better to have it stitched to the outside. That's where we really want the chain weighted to. But I do not want any stitches to show, so I'm going to pick up my chain. I'm going to pick up a little piece of my, you can see I'm kind of wrapping the chain with my thread. I'm going to pick up a little piece of my velvet. I'm going to do a couple stitches because of how I've got my, I can easily pick this back out if I don't like it. I'm going to do a couple of these. Now I'm really just wrapping the chain with thread and just getting, so it's literally just mostly thread wrapping around that chain with a little pick into my velvet. And then I'm going to flip this around after I get a couple of stitches in. Just stab myself and see how it looks. If it looks absolutely, I'm not getting this side anymore. I'm only getting chain. The chain's pinned to that side just because it makes it easier for me to see and to work with. I'm actually getting coat. And it's going to take me a little bit. It's not very much. It's only 2 feet, but I'm going to be so cautious how big of a bite I'm taking. And you can see I'm really, I may have to get my magnifying glass back out too. It's about time for new glasses for this gal. All right, let's flip it around and let's see how that's looking on the right side. See if we can even see anything. It's going to be way over here somewhere. Okay. Can I feel any chain? Even? I can't. Oh, there it is. It's in there. Yeah, cannot see it. Cannot see my stitches. So I am going to continue doing what I'm currently doing. This is where I just stitched. You cannot see those stitches. I can feel the chain, but I can't see the stitches. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just slowly, carefully do that wrapping all the way around. You should start in the middle. It recommends it. I'm not. I've just pinned mine like crazy on one side, and I'm just going to stitch across. It's real easy to pull it if you're not careful, especially if you're doing like I am where you're flipping it around and checking it. So, all right, I'll be here for a bit. After this, we'll go work on the button. Just so you can kind of see how it looks now that I'm away from, I'm more on the inside. I'm right in where the fold of the hem is. That's really where I want the chain. I want that chain sitting in that fold, and I'm really just whipping it through. This is what it looks like on the outside. You really don't see hardly, let me flip it better so you can see. You really don't see much of anything. And of course that's going to be the folded edge, so it's going to get folded. So it will be the very edge on the bottom, so not noticeable at all. But that's what I'm doing. It's soft and loose in there. It's not real tight. And I'm halfway through. It's not taking that long, and then I'll be ready to just sew this shut. I'm ready to sew this thing shut and give it a press. I have one more comment on the chain. Down here where it's sewn together, you can see my stitching. And you can see my hand stitching where I sewed on the ribbon. In places, because of how I sewed the ribbon, I kind of pinched it shut, and it would have been easier to sew my chain on if I had done it before the ribbon. And I think if I were to do this again, I probably, in my order would have been chain first, ribbon second, because I could easily see my seam where I sewed my lining on, and I would have just stitched that chain to this seam, and it would have been invisible on the outside. It would have been laying exactly where I want it, and then I could have gone out and added my ribbon, my pretty ribbon to the outside, and not have pinched it shut in a few places. It's not exactly where I want it because I couldn't get my ribbon in between. It's just not exactly how I want it. It won't probably affect the way it hangs at all, but I would have preferred to done it the other way, and that's just because I didn't know. It's my first time making this, so I'm going to give you guys the heads up. You may want to try putting your chain in first. It may make it a little easier when you go to do it, because you may pinch it shut like I did in a few places when putting on your ribbon and find it a little difficult. All right, let's talk about how this is already falling apart down here. What I have done is I've gone on the other side, and as much as possible, I've pulled up all the frayed parts and I have interfaced them, and I caught them all up in there and to protect them. And now I am just pinning on the two layers, and I'm going to stitch them together. And can you see I have this gap here? It fit perfectly before the chain. So I am going, because this is stretchy and the chain made it more secure, but the chain is just floating in there. So I can actually maneuver my chain around. So I'm going to do a little maneuvering. This side's not bad. This side is a little tight. So I've got to do a little maneuvering to figure out what I've done to give myself a good ½ inch gap there, and get it nice and straight. I'm going to whip stitch this closed, and then we are going to go work on the button. I'm going to press it, put my velvet back on here, give this a good gentle pressing, and I brought up some plain black clothes to try it on with. I have been thinking, I will just tell you, as I have been working on this needs a beautiful cloche made out of this. You remember the hat I made a while back? I'll put the picture up here. I made my beautiful wool coat, also the picture, and I made a matching cloche, and I'm thinking I need another cloche now. Even if I never wear this, I probably would wear the cloche actually, and I'm wanting one. So that may be something that happens in the future. But next week we're going to make the cute little reticule. I'm very excited about it. I've already got a lot of things prepped on it. Just a little heads up. Let's get this whip stitched, and then I will show you how I'm going to put together my little how I'm going to jerry rig this button. And these are the buttons that I want to use, but one button is too small, so I want to put them together in a grouping of 3. I have a whole big package of them, and that's good because when I started pulling them out, some of them were defective. One of the little roses you can see fell out. I did find it, so we could super glue it back in, but I found this just plain button, and then I also found this one. And what I would do is I would sew through the shank, through the hole, like this, to make a bigger button, and then I would flip it over and sew again. But I think what I'm going to do instead is use this one because it has a shank, so I will wrap from shank to this in 3 places around it. That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to try it. And then I can sew it down through the shank. I like having the shank. I think that's going to be the easiest way to sew it on. And I have some nice heavy button thread. I want a good heavy duty thread. I don't want my thread breaking as I'm wrapping my button to my stabilizer button, my under button. So that's what I'm going to try. I may even end up using a little super glue underneath there too, but I'm going to start with the thread and we'll just see how it goes. We're totally jerry-rigging this thing together. We'll see. We'll see. If this button doesn't work, I will come back. I know this one will, but I would rather have the shank instead of having to come back and do a thread shank. But I may have to make my thread shank. Okay, let's see how this works. So I don't have a knot in here. I've just sewn it. I've just pulled the thread through, and I'm going to now go through this, and I'm going to tie a knot. I think that's how I'm going to start. I'm going to tie it in a knot this way. Let's get him out of the way. Definitely think I'm going to do some gluing. So that it's on there. And then I'm going to leave my tail so I can tie another knot. And I'm going to wrap it around a few more times. Anyway, I'm going to do this quite a few times. And then when I'm happy with how many times I've done it, I'm going to tie another knot. And I'll probably tie a knot a few more times. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for the first button. It's actually going to get worse. The first button's the easiest. As I add buttons and get them crowded on here, it's going to get a little more difficult to work with. But I'm going to continue to work on this till I get all 3 buttons, and then I'll see if I like it. The only thing I can see, you can see how that's falling apart. I don't want my center to show. If my center shows, I'm going to either have to super glue the buttons down or find a way I might be able to stitch them together in the middle. We'll see. Or put a 3rd button in there. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to work on this for a little bit. I don't think it'll take that long. And then we'll see how it looks. We'll see if if this ends up being our final button transformation or not, or if I choose something else. Okay, so here we are, stitched together. It's a floppity old thing. So what I'm going to try, because I have plenty of buttons, if it doesn't work, I'll try again. I'm going to go down, I'm going to get my Gorilla Glue, and I am going to glue it from behind and let it rest. I'm also, after I glue, I'm going to glue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on this edge, flip it over, and let it sit so that this can become stable. So it'll become like a little star like that. And if it is stable and it's happy, I'm going to then also glue all of the threads so that the threads don't come undone too. So we'll see if that works. If it does not, I will be back for round 2, but I have a feeling it will. So I'm going to go Gorilla Glue this and give it a little rest. And let me check my time. I think I might eat a little lunch, and I'll be back with you in a bit. It will be very pretty, though. If it works, it's going to work great. We'll see. If it doesn't, what a mess. Hey, it's been about 30 minutes. I went down and I found we had a tube of E6000. It's not that pretty, and I probably will eventually, I have some stuck to my hand. I might eventually replace the button with something else, but for today and for the video, it's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my threads, and I ran up the stairs, now I'm breathless. I'm going to trim my threads. It's a little gummy on the thread, and sew this on, and I'm going to steam the garment really well. So here's, just so you can see, here's the button singular. So individual button, my new little sort of cloverleaf button, and I probably could really build this up. And I could have probably sewn this on individually in, 3 close together and made that work too. I think it's going to be easier to actually wear it and loop the button if they're sewn to one sort of shank. It's not the prettiest. I think eventually I will find a better button, but for now, this will work for the video. Let's get this on. I'm going to steam it. I have already started steaming it. I'm going to give it another little steam and get changed, and let's see how it looks. All right, it is done. It just does not fit the same without arms in those sleeves. It just doesn't. There's a little button. There's my button loop. And you can kind of see the hem down there. Somebody just reached up and grabbed my hand while I was trying to film. So I am going to put it on, and we'll see how it looks on. Okay. So, get my hair out of the way. I don't often present with my back to you. It's my least favorite side. However, the back of this coat is really its best feature. So that's how I'm going to start, by talking to you. Now, I will say when it's on the dress form, it doesn't show quite as well because it really needs legs. It kind of tucks forward and swings forward. And when there's legs in there, it hangs a little better. This definitely is a hip-centric shape because of the way it drapes. But I really like it in this fabric. I think this fabric works great. I'm just going to turn to the front, and you can see the pretty. I like this pattern. I think it's very fun, and I could see doing it again. I really like it in the velvet. The thing I have been the least happy about is my choice in lining. Now, one of the issues is that I had to choose online. I didn't have the ability to go in and feel my fabrics. So here we are. But it actually is quite flattering and cute. Look at this. Look at how cute this is. Okay, I'm going to change my camera angle just a tiny bit. I had it angled towards the window because it shows off the colors better. But look at how cute this is. Now, I'm just wearing black pants, black top, black shoes because I really want you to look at the coat. The lining is still wanting to tuck out. You can see my pretty ribbon. And I think I'm going to come in, not today. I'm pretty done with this coat. I'm ready to just sew something new. But I think I'm going to come in and along this collar piece, I'm going to do some tacking to the lining to just make it stay in place better. The back side of the velvet against that lining just slips and slides so nicely, it just wants to flip out. And that's just the two fabrics working against each other. If you were working with a heavier brocade or a different type of fabric for your outer fabric, I don't think you would have the issue that I'm currently having. So here is the final 1910s, 1920s cocoon coat. It really needs a cloche. I do have a fascinator. I'm going to go throw it on. You can tell me what you think. Oh, my mic is dying. Isn't that always the way? All right. It's very dramatic. I'm looking quite Edgar Gorey, like I should drape myself over a tombstone. Let me go fix my mics before they die. Okay, friends, my mic completely died, so I hope the end of this did have sound. Thanks for sewing with me. I'd love to know what you think of this super long project. It was 5 parts. I usually try not to do anything quite that long, but sometimes that happens. Next week we're going to work on the reticule that goes with this. I may eventually make a cloche. I would love to put together a little more classic outfit to really style this, but that's for another day. I just really want to get the video out before I run out of time. So I will, if you want to see all the parts, because this was a 5-part, I believe, video, I will have all of them linked below. It started with inspiration and a video all about Poiret, who is one of the most famous designers of this coat, though there were others, and a lot of inspiration piece coats, and then the Folkwear, which is the pattern company, the Poiret Cocoon coat pattern, and then all of the pattern work and the making. I did make the half scale pattern last week to kind of explain how it goes together, and because I did that, it will be much easier for me to explain to you grading if you need to do some size changes different than what the pattern company did. So I will be using that for a future video on altering this pattern. So I will see you next week for another fun video.